Welcome, everyone, to episode 46 of the GGG Podcast. We got a great show for you today. Still got some news coming out of the aftermath of Gamescom. Nintendo Direct was this morning, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But before we get into all the news that's been happening, Phil, we're going to check in with you. What have you been playing this week? Have you had time for games? Are you still on the multiverses?
Like okay, Paul.
Yes.
Beetlejuice on Multiverses is very good.
Oh my god.
I demolished with him. It's ridiculous. I just started playing him. He's got these crazy moves. Hitboxes are too big, probably. I've been playing that.
Same thing as Samurai Jack, where he's a little.
Yeah, Samurai Jack has been nerfed a little bit, so we're done with him. No, but. I gotta say our show is now in its 46th episode, meaning it is 46 years old, meaning it's time for us to buy a convertible and have a nice midlife crisis. But outside of that, I've also been playing a bevy of games. Star Wars Outlaws, which we'll get to in a minute, Concord, which we will also get to in a minute, and Black Myth Wukong, which I don't know we're going to talk about this show, but so many good games right now, kind of like a couple of heavy hitters in a row that are all trying to demand my time. It's intense and wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it. Late August was going to start the releases, and it came. I mean, Black Myth Wukong's been doing so well, sold so many copies over in China. I think they had 3 million players on Steam.
Yeah.
They've broken Steam's most concurrent players numbers, which it makes sense because there are a lot of people in China and that's where it's selling the most, but I've been seeing a ton of it over here in the States as well. So awesome.
Yeah, they are
see.
selling out of PlayStation 5s in China left and right because people are trying to get their hands on Black Myth Wukong, which big win for PlayStation, kind of a bummer for Xbox that they didn't get their hands on that one. But,
Yeah. Well, maybe PlayStation will go multi-platinum.
Sure.
As for me, I've been playing a nice assortment of things, but just to hit the highlights, so I was in the Splitgate 2 alpha, so I got to play that quite a bit, and I was impressed with it. At the same time, it did feel very much like an alpha where the game needs more time before it comes out. I don't know what release window they're eyeing for Splitgate 2. I would say at the earliest, I hope it's December. But I could wait a little longer. But regardless of it being a little alpha-y, I thought that it was really good. Splitgate 1, I think, captured a lot of that Halo. It was kind of like a hybrid between Halo and Call of Duty, where it was kind of a twitch shooter like Call of Duty, but a lot of the aesthetic.
The guns felt like Halo. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then of course you have the Portal elements from Portal, and so those are still there and everything. They've definitely switched up the aesthetic, which I think we've seen in the cinematics, where it's like we're not going for the Halo armor aesthetic anymore. This is more of a sporty. We're taking some notes from the finals, especially. So that was fun to play around with. I'm good at it, so obviously I like it. But it is a little funny because Splitgate 2 is also technically a character shooter, which we've been getting so much of. There are 3 characters you could pick from, and then there's 3 different loadouts for those 3 characters, or variants. So that was a little funny to see that literally every company is doing that right now.
I kind of wonder, I feel like everyone's jumping on the football right now, and the football being character shooters, and now this is dev that started 4 or 5 years ago, and now people are probably getting a little bit sick of hero shooters to an extent, and I wonder if the Call of Duty, especially with their next iteration, is going to come back and sweep something up. Because I did get to watch that trailer for the new Call of Duty single player and some of their multiplayer, and I was like, damn, this does look pretty good.
The zombies, man. The zombies look good. I gotta say, the zombie mode. It does look good. I think I think this is part of a bigger discussion, but I'm curious as if as to whether this is a product of how game developers are being taught in school when they're going to universities or colleges and they're taking these game development classes, and they're like, all right, we have a character design course that you have to take. And so now that's one of the primary things they're being hired to do is like, oh, okay, well, you know how to design fancy characters, design a fancy character, So I'm curious if that's part of it, or if that's, the higher ups being like, character shooters, that's what we want. We want to be Overwatch.
It's a tough thing because I think, character shooters enable you to get more unique character designs, like more interesting, varied stuff. After a while, when you're playing online with like, Call of Duty or Fortnite, like the skins all sort of become the same. They look cool. You're like, oh no, I'm fighting two Spider-Mans. But then when you have something that looks very specific, it's a little bit more interesting to me.
Sure. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Was I playing anything else? I jumped back on Void Crew a little bit. They had another update, so I was excited about that. It's gotten a lot of performance updates, so it's running a lot better for people who are interested in Void Crew.
We have the Void Crew soon.
Yes,
we gotta do it.
We gotta do it. It's a lot of fun. If people are looking to have fun with your friends, it's a great game to have fun with your friends. So. And then some Helldivers, some little sprinklings, and then obviously I've been playing Concord because that released last week. So yeah. But let's move into our major releases this week, which there is one standout release that came out this week, and that is Star Wars Outlaws, which we are going to be talking about for our main topic. So we're going to save our critical judgmental juices or praise for the main topic. So we're going to skim right over that, and we're going to just jump into the news. So what do we got first on the news today, Phil?
Well, first we have Star Wars Outlaw. No, first we have inZOI. This, I believe, was when the trailer came out. At the end of Gamescom,
I think it was
Gamescom?
Towards the end of Gamescom. I think they also had a booth and did some interviews at Gamescom. So
inZOI is basically the new sort of Sims competitor. It looks beautiful. It is. What's the company name that is bringing us this one? It's Game.
Oh my god.
We'll come back.
I will look it up.
Yeah. But it is. You've probably seen images floating around if you are checking out games anywhere. But it is a very in-depth character creator. These sort of hyper-realistic / kind of K-pop looking character models.
Very K-pop. Good call.
Very K-pop. Yeah. And it is a game where you just sort of simulate life. They have you sort of going around the pier, taking pictures with your car, all sorts of wild stuff. So it kind of seems like this merge of The Sims, an old game called Second Life, because there is a multiplayer component where you can mess with other people, or you can play it all single player. And Paul was telling me that you can even just sort of play a version of the game where you control an entire town. It's again, would be really cool to have a competitor for The Sims. If this game comes out, I feel still burned by the last game.
Yes,
that was set to be a competitor for The Sims. That looked beautiful and gorgeous and amazing, and was going to release in 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they decided not to. Conspiratorially, do I think inZOI had something to do with it? Did they buy out that company? Did they buy up all of their assets?
Perhaps. I have to say, the graphics and the engine for this game look way better than the last one. Most notably, Krafton is the publisher for this game, and most notably they have published PUBG. So if you are a PUBG fan, this is the same publisher. So yeah, but it looks really good. It kind of gives me a little bit of the it looks too good to be true feeling. I think if it launched and it plays the way that it actually looks in some of these videos, I think that would be incredible. But is this running on a 4090? What is this coming out for? Can this run on a PS5 or an Xbox? I don't know. So
it looks very Peter Molyneux-esque.
Yes, it looks too good to be true. So yeah, I've already said this on the podcast earlier this year, but just I am dying for a Sims competitor. I think there are more games and more innovations that we can make in the life simulation genre and space, and because The Sims has done that pretty much unopposed. Like it's that's why they charge for all these crazy DLC packs, because they don't have any competition, and if they have competition, they'll have to be forced to make their game better so that it sells. So I hope that this game is a real thing. I hope that it comes out, and I hope that we actually get a full gameplay demo so we can see it functioning, as opposed to these very curated videos that have been coming out of Gamescom.
You know, I would love to get to play this as a sort of pernicious god who sees just all of my different people. I get to pick one and torture them, and sort of like follow them around like some sort of eldritch horror.
Oh wow! Yeah, I mean,
and if inZOI can make that happen for me, I'm sold.
I mean, that's kind of. I mean, you said Peter Molyneux, and I'm thinking of the game that he announced that we talked about last week. Black and white, or what? It's not black and white, but it is black and white. You know what I mean?
It is black.
Heroes, what? Albion, something of Albion.
Tales of Albion, or something like
Tales
that.
Tales of Albion, because that kind of makes sense. So,
man just wanted to make black and white again.
He did, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay, Peter, but just make it good.
Reboot it,
okay?
Reboot it. It's fine.
Yeah, that's all right.
This next bit of news is pretty exciting. Paul, do you want to take over? Because I know you're.
I do.
This is your zone.
I am. Yeah. So this is about Space Marine 2, which I think is a sleeper game for Game of the Year. I don't think it'll win, but I think it might get a nomination, just because of how the internet's blowing up about it. And I was a huge fan of Space Marine 1. Everything that I've seen in Space Marine 2 is just like, yeah, we just made everything better. We got a little bit of news today, and that is they released the Year 1 roadmap, or as they call it, the Year 1 battle plan. They've released it in 2 different tiers. So there's like the free updates, and then there's a season's pass that you get with one of the upgraded. Actually, I think you get it with all of the upgraded editions. But yeah, so for the first season that starts in September, when the game launches on September 9th, we're going to be getting ultra wide support. It's nice. Wish it was there when it launched. Private PvE lobbies. Again, nice. Wish it was there when it launched. Battle Barge Sparring Arena. That sounds really fun. So I'm curious as to whether that is a like one-on-one PvP thing, or if that's just like a training arena mode where it's like, oh, you can test out all the weapons and whatnot. As for the seasons past, you're going to be getting a bunch of different armor sets and skins that are from various different Warhammer Space Marine factions throughout the galaxy. All of them look very cool. But now let's start getting into the interesting roadmap stuff, which is really in Season 2. So you're going to be getting new PvE missions, going to be getting a new lethal difficulty, a new pistol, a new enemy type, and if you bought the Seasons Pass, you're going to be getting Dark Angels. So it's going to be some cosmetic packs, and the Dark Angels are very famous in Warhammer. So the Warhammer fans know what I'm talking about. And then further along down the roadmap, we're going to be getting new PvE missions, new PvP game mode, new PvP arenas, more new enemies, prestige ranks, Battle Barge expansion. So whatever that means, we don't know yet.
Battle Barge getting bigger.
Yeah,
Battle Barge getting bigger.
So, but honestly, like, the last roadmap we talked about on the podcast, I believe, was Concord's roadmap. And frankly, immediately upon seeing the Space Marine 2 roadmap, it's like, okay, this is a legitimate roadmap. They're putting in new modes. They're putting in new weapons. They're putting in new enemies. they're adding prestige and stuff like that. And yeah, it's, sprinkled with cosmetics and everything like that as well. But this looks pretty impressive. And I'm happy to see that they have all of this planned out. And honestly, I'm happy that the game got delayed enough that they could have this stuff, in the pipeline. So
totally. This whole thing really screams to me that if you look at the roadmap, you see that there's the free updates and the season pass updates. Season pass updates, there is a lot of stuff, but the bulk of it and the bulk of the interesting things to me are on the free updates pipeline, which is very exciting. It means that the game, no matter what, when you buy it, when you make the bulk purchase, you're going to get new enemies, new modes, new weapons, all really, really good. It seems like the season pass stuff is like extra little bits and bobs to make your character look a certain way, which is really, really fun. But I'm really happy to see that if you buy the game, you still get supported for a little while from these devs.
Absolutely. It's there. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And most of the stuff is in the free update section of this roadmap. So, which is fantastic. And it's also like with the new modes, it's great to have those updates be free because it means that everyone's going to be on the same servers. And so the matchmaking is not going to be hindered by any of that. So that's great.
You're not splitting people up. That's huge.
Exactly. And it is important to note for season 3 and season 4 in 2025 for the seasons pass, there is unannounced stuff that is coming, but we don't know what that is yet. So it's indicated by the incoming transmission thing if you're looking at the visual. So yeah. What's next on the list?
Let's move right along and talk about something that we all knew was coming. Much like the end of times, the PS5 Pro approaches.
Oh my God.
And it was an open secret at Gamescom, meaning that all the devs, all the people there were talking about like, oh yeah, well, these features are going to be cooked into the other version of it.
The other version.
The other version of it. It is definitely a pretty interesting thing. I have heard reporting that I haven't been able to like fully vet that the PS5 Pro could start shipping as soon as it went like within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
I don't know what exactly they would time that with. This sort of like, I feel like usually a big game kind of ushers with one of these things to help like.
I mean, Astro comes out in a little bit.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's Astro.
Yep, the game
his
you
new
need
game
a
is just
PS5 Pro for. You really need it for Astro.
He's just inside a PS5 Pro the whole game. That's what it's a free pack-in. But according to some of the leaks that we've seen over the years, there's a couple like roundups of things that we know will likely be in the PS5 Pro. Wow, I can't speak today.
The PPP.
45% performance improvement in rasterized rendering thanks to a larger GPU. Better ray tracing, up to 2 to 3 times faster, and a super spectral resolution. A bunch of like things that are going to make it look marginally better, and possibly, I guess, be able to give you ray tracing and 60 frames per second mode on most games. I don't know, man. PS5 Pro, I feel like we've talked about it a little bit. How do you feel about the possibility of PS5 Pro coming within this year?
I mean, it's not for me. I'm a huge PlayStation fan. Like, I'd like to think that I can call Sony out when they're, spewing BS, which we'll talk about in the next topic. But like this is not a big enough improvement. It's great that we can get ray tracing in 60 frames per second. Like, I think the PS5 Pro will probably launch at like $600 or something like that. But to me, it's like, if I'm really, really that concerned about, I need to run this in the highest resolution and the max settings, it's like, well, then I'm playing these games on PC. Then I have a supercomputer that I'm running my games on, and I'm not going to be like, oh, I need a PS5 Pro because my PlayStation 5 just isn't cutting it because I only get 32 frames per second in the ray tracing mode. It's like, I play it on performance mode anyway because I like the frames. So I think what would convince me to get a PS5 Pro is like games running in 8K. And I don't think that we're there yet. And I don't think that 8K TVs are in as many homes as people would like them to be.
Not prolific enough.
Yeah. And so it's like 4K is kind of this standard right now. And I think it's going to be another couple years before a lot more people have 8K TVs, even though some people have them now, and whatnot. But it's like, if you have an 8K TV and you're a hardcore gamer, like, again, like, you're probably set up with an 8K monitor with your supercomputer running all of this stuff. So for me, it's too soon. It's not a big enough graphical leap that is going to convince me to do anything. So the only thing Sony could do is do a press conference where they show me the difference and, cross their fingers that it's a big enough difference to convince the public. But right now, for me, I'm not going to buy it. So,
well, I remember the first time that I saw a PS4 Pro running Horizon Zero Dawn on a 4K TV, and up until that point I had 1080p, and I saw it and I was like, oh, that's what I need. I think like seeing it in person, mind you, because like a lot of us will watch this stuff on YouTube and it gets condensed. You can't really tell the difference.
Right.
You can kind of see it in person, but it is so difficult for them to get to enough places. Granted the fact that people aren't walking into Best Buys as much anymore. People aren't walking into Targets as much as they used to. So it's really hard to show these sort of very minor differences. And I think gaming as a whole just kind of needs like a leap forward in some sort of big bound that this just isn't going to be. I will say to their credit, they're trying to do something that would require special inputs like you have on your computer, like a DLSS style input,
right,
that would allow for better color, which for me, after like seeing things in 60 and seeing like ray tracing, HDR, like true HDR, is a giant difference maker in terms of seeing something that looks very beautiful versus seeing something that looks very bland. All that said, I would rather just invest in a computer.
Yeah, or like I feel like they kind of need a launch game with it, like kind of what you alluded to at the very beginning where we were talking about this topic of like, is there a game that's coming out that they could bundle this with? And it's not Astro, and they don't have a God of War or a Spider-Man or a Last of Us in the pipeline. So it's like, I would say closest is going to be Ghost of Tsushima 2. So maybe Ghost of Tsushima 2 is the game that they push it with. And maybe they can show me some fancy things. But yeah, still.
Here's what I'm thinking. They drop Uncharted 5 and be like, and you can only play it on the PS5 Pro.
Lies, slander.
Stupid.
Gonna shoot themselves in the foot with that.
Yeah. Do the second Dreamcast maneuver.
Yeah.
Speaking of failures, why don't we move on to the next story?
All right. So Concord has had an absolutely horrific launch. So this is a game that both Phil and I have played. We played the beta. We picked up the actual game itself and got a chance to play around with it. I really like the gameplay. But yeah, it had a horrible launch. There has been a little bit of misreporting going on, so I want to correct that a little bit. In that a lot of people were like, oh, this game launched and there were only 300 people playing on Steam. This is ridiculous. First of all, when people started posting that, that is when the Digital Deluxe Edition Early Access launched. So,
okay.
So that is not when anybody else pre-ordered the game and had to wait until Friday to play it, like I did. But that being said, after the game officially launched, it only got up to 700, so it wasn't that much better.
So 200 more people bought the game. That's on Steam only.
Yes, and that is something that's been left out of the reporting that's been online. Here's looking at you, IGN.
But it's more interesting to say that only 700 people are playing the game,
exactly,
and ignore one of the largest install bases that exists.
Yes. I mean, look, it's what that means. It is truly a failure of a PC launch. That's what that means.
Yeah.
But we do not know how many people bought it on PlayStation. But if the Steam numbers are any indication, it didn't sell well in general. And so it's not having a good launch. And I think that there's several reasons for it. I'm going to be doing a video. I started writing up the article before we started recording today. But essentially what I am going to say in that video is just, I think that the game is overpriced for what it is right now. I think like most competitive first-person shooters are free to play right now. They're free to play. And this is hey, you have to pay $40 up front for the cheapest version. And I think realistically, with the amount of content that is in the game, it's really somewhere in between like a $20 to $30 purchase. And this is all being said, like there's no microtransactions in the game. So it's like when you buy the game, you can unlock everything in the game. There's no microtransactions,
no extra stuff,
there's no currency, there's no seasons pass, there's none of that. So it's like you get the full game. But one of the other things I talked about with you, Phil, is like they advertised, and we talked about this on the podcast when they released their roadmap. They advertised that there are 6 different modes in the game, and that just straight up ain't true. It is not true at all. So right now in the game, there's Brawl, which is team deathmatch. There's
Trophy Hunt, right?
Yeah, well, Trophy Hunt is part of Team Deathmatch. It's the same thing.
That's the thing that I'm wondering if they're considering those game modes. Because if that's the case, there might be 6.
Well, when you click play, there are 6 different icons that you can click
on.
I
see.
And so it's Brawl, Overrun, which is capture the point, and then Rivalry, which is a single spawn round-based mode. And then the other 3 things you can click on are Training, Practice Range, and Time Trials. And Training and Practice Range, sorry guys, but that's called a tutorial. And a tutorial is not a game mode. And everybody knows that. And that's not a new standard of doing things. Not a freaking game mode. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. Time Trials is one of those game modes that you throw in a game where you're like, wow, we need another freaking game mode. What are we going to do on a budget? I know, we're going to throw in Time Trials. And so I even tried them out because I didn't want to, be on my high horse or whatever. And it's fine. It's okay. But most notably for me, there's no competitive mode, and there's not a lot of clarity with the progression in the game. So it's like, I don't know what I'm unlocking by leveling this character up. Or I'll level up, and I unlocked a new version of Lennox, but I wasn't playing as Lennox. I was playing as a different character, but I got that because of my player level. And so it's really weird. That being said, I still really like the gameplay. I still think this could be a good game, but have you gotten a chance to play it since its official release, Phil?
I have. I learned some things about it that were not made aware to me at any point in the game, because I didn't try the training stuff, I guess. But I think it's got some really interesting things that it's doing. For example, if you switch between characters throughout a match, you get bonuses that those characters have. So if you hit one of each class, you get a significant buff when you're playing as say the 3rd or 4th character. However, there is a real bad problem where people will sit on one character and you just can't access it if it is something good. So if you want to hop off to get a boost, you try to hop back on and it is done. I agree that there's a lot of issues, but I've been having a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah, it is fun.
Everybody,
that's what's disappointing, is that it's a fun game. It's just you got to pay up front, and I think that's the problem right now. So
I have a buddy who works at Sony who I've been getting to play with, and he's like, "Man, this is really, really great." He got it for free, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I would have paid for this. It would have taken several people to convince me, oh, you got to try this game." But it definitely, it's better when you have a team. It's better when everybody's on the same page. And I will say the small player base is actually kind of nice, because even a couple times I would like run through and see a person that I had played with previously, and it I don't know. Everyone was kind of focused in doing their thing. You didn't find a lot of people in there just screwing around, which is nice in a game like that that's more objective based. So I do hope that in like Concord's second year they manage to get it together if they are given that much of like a landing pad.
I mean, I think it'd be a miracle if they made it to a second year. I want them to. I will say, and I am also going to post about this in the video, but I do think this is a prime candidate for a relaunch, where like we'll see the Halloween sale come down and Concord will be 50% off. It'll be down to $20, which is a more reasonable price for the game. I think like you could charge 30 for it, but because I think it had such a rough launch, you got to pay another tax where it's like, all right, it's really $20. And then maybe next year or Christmas time, holiday season, you see it go free to play. And they incorporate microtransactions and currencies and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely possible, but people have to be willing to give this a shot. And I think that there are valid gripes with the game, but there's also a lot of good stuff in the game too that people just are not giving a chance. And
Absolutely.
To kind of touch on something that is kind of bigger than Concord itself, but I do feel like in general, not just in video games, but just kind of in the media space, it's like we're getting all of these media outlets who are like, we don't want to make anything unless it's already attached to a known IP, and because we're going to lose money on it. And then you have a game like Concord comes out and it's like, hey, we tried doing this quirky design. Yeah, it's Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's not really a design you see often in video games. And so we're trying to do our own thing, build our own universe. Is it an amazing universe? No, not necessarily. But like, we have to be willing to try new things. Otherwise, we're just going to get the same games and content over and over and over again because people are too scared to make new things. So we as consumers need to speak with our dollars.
Yeah.
So.
I think yeah, like you're saying, sort of larger point is there's not a lot of new things getting made because people are afraid, companies are afraid to like go out on that limb and do that. At the same time, I get the reticence as a consumer to be like, man, everything's a little bit more expensive right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got $60 to drop on something I've never heard of. Like, maybe it's better for me to save that money and play the hundreds of old games that I have, because that is also the environment that we're in, where there's like literally a Steam library full of like Belle's or Beast's library from Beauty and the Beast with like the ladder, and you're like, the Binding of Isaac today. Well, nice. There's so many kind of evergreen games that I do wonder what it's going to take to sort of reignite this. And my best hopes are for Concord, but I don't think it's gonna be the one to reignite. But their lore is so cool and like rich and well thought out. Mm-hmm. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I like the aesthetic. Everyone was judging the design. I was like, I really like it. Like, the graphics are better than pretty much every other first-person shooter out there on the market. Like, that graphics aren't everything. They're not. But it's like, it's got great graphics. It's got great gameplay. And so those are two big factors. So, like, those two things are hard for me to ignore, even with the other problems that are going on. So, all right, well, let's press on. If you want to talk more Concord, check out our channel for that video. Indiana Jones, we got this announcement at Gamescom.
I don't know how I did this in the Word document.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But Indiana Jones, obviously it got announced that it was going to be coming to PlayStation, like a bunch of Xbox titles, because Xbox is just going to become a publisher, as we've discussed many times, and Phil Spencer has been unwilling to acknowledge. It's going to be coming to PlayStation early next year in the spring, I believe. And apparently when interviewed about this, the developers over at Bethesda were very prepared for this announcement, saying that they would not have to do a lot of work because it was designed with software that it would run on the PS5. And so I thought this was kind of like a no news type of a thing, where it was just kind of like, did they know they were coming to PS5 for a very long time? And was it one of the things where like the Indiana Jones game was being made before Microsoft acquired Bethesda, and they were like, we already have this running on PlayStation in early build, and then Xbox is like, no, we need exclusives, that's why we bought you, and so it's an Xbox game, and they're like, no, we don't want to do that anymore, so can you guys do that thing you told us about when we bought you? They're like, yeah, of course.
I feel like they did, like Phil Spencer says that when he takes over the company, and Todd just like, keep working on the PlayStation compatibility. I don't think this is gonna go that well. Yeah, I think that is likely the case, man. That they were like, they've had a program working. I feel like most games, like if it's coming to PC, it is kind of console agnostic. The only question mark ever is the Switch, and I don't think this game was coming to Switch by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and hopefully it just speaks to the future of Bethesda games, because I want Skyrim 2 or whatever the next Elder Scrolls game is going to be called. I'm hoping it's Skyrim 2 to be on my PlayStation and to be available for everyone, you know?
Of course. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see. We got to press on because we're burning through time now. Handsome Jack was rumored to be coming back in Borderlands 4. During the announcement, there were people who were like freeze framing things and looking for, Easter eggs and stuff like that. And somebody was like, I think that's Handsome Jack just in there. Perfect. But it has been, or at least what the company has said about it, is that it's not Handsome Jack, that it is indeed something more sinister than Handsome Jack. But if you've seen the image, it does kind of look like Handsome Jack. So I'm wondering, is this a Handsome Jack relative of some kind? Are they bringing Handsome Jack back in some more sinister way? Do we want more Handsome Jack? Where are you on this, Phil?
It's Gorgeous Jim. I'm calling it now. It's Handsome Jack's younger robot brother, Gorgeous Jim. No, I think... do you smell that? That's desperation. If they bring back Handsome Jack, in my book, hey, this really worked in Borderlands 2. Let's do it again. The whole Borderlands 4 scenario, at least to me, has been so thirsty. That first announcement video was like, what are we doing? After Borderlands 3, I feel like they're trying to just cover ground, and they have been losing it at a pretty steady clip. You know, Gearbox as a developer has had their series of mishaps. And Borderlands, I enjoyed Borderlands 3 probably more than most people, but like they had that Aliens game that was a huge blow to their standing as a game developer. And then I feel like it's just been a series of meh until the movie that was a big stinky turd on the Borderlands namesake.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think honestly, like, I don't get how people are excited about Borderlands 4 yet, because there's nothing to be excited about thus far.
Right. Yeah. We don't know anything. We saw a cinematic trailer. We talked about it when it was announced at Gamescom. I think it was our first topic on last week's episode. It's just like, great, we know that it's coming out, and we're really not pumped for it because of how bad the movie did, and the franchise doesn't really seem like it has a direction. It just seems like, hey, this is a known IP. We need to keep pumping out the content. I love Handsome Jack. I think Borderlands 2 is the best Borderlands game. That being said, I think we've run the gamut on Handsome Jack. I don't think there's any juice left to squeeze out of that lemon. So
out of that particular butt stallion.
Yes, out of that butt stallion.
I don't know, and this is just here's a kind of pitch from me to you,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to respond with your own idea. But I think if they were to do something to make me excited about Borderlands 4, it would probably be, hey, all the characters that are still alive from the old games, you could pick from them to play as well as several new characters. Like,
Sure.
I think they need to, like I've said, expand on by a sort of series of magnitude. If they were to do that and give us more variety, I think it would be pretty exciting. But is there anything that they could do for Borderlands 4 to get you very excited about it?
I'm really not sure. I liked Borderlands 3. I just didn't love it. So it wasn't a bad game. I really liked Tiny Tina's Wonderlands way more. I think that's been the best Borderlands out of all the different Borderlands games since Borderlands 2. One obviously with Wonderlands, you create your own character, so there's not set characters that you play as, and so I kind of like that freedom a little bit more because I didn't really feel like when you picked a character in the Borderlands games that they really had a unique perspective, or like the narrative didn't really change depending on who I was playing. It was just kind of like, well, he's got voice lines, and you can do that with a character creation screen. So I think it would be cool to see maybe some, instead of just the RNG of RPG mechanics in there, if you actually got like, oh, if I'm playing as Axton from Borderlands 2, why is Axton involved in this particular story? Does the story change because you're playing as a specific character? If you're playing as a siren in this cutscene, does that matter if you're not playing as a siren in this cutscene? And so I think narrative is really where Borderlands kind of falls through the floor a lot of the time. So adding more of the, I think that's why Borderlands 2 with Handsome Jack stood out so much, is because he carried so much of that narrative in the game, and we haven't really gotten that again. So
what would be great is sort of a mashup of Tales of the Borderlands and Borderlands, where you're a character that's making choices that alter the story going forward.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Perfect. All right, we figured it out. Gearbox, Randy, just hit us up.
Do that.
We'll make the game for you.
Do that. All right, we got to press on. So Nintendo Direct happened this morning, and originally we were going to have this as our main topic for this episode, but not really a lot of things were actually announced at Nintendo Direct. Phil, you and I have talked about this throughout this year and even some last year, where we just kind of feel like Nintendo's a little bit in hibernation mode until the next Switch comes out. And I feel like this Nintendo Direct is more evidence for that theory. So I'm just going to read off all of the announcements that stood out this morning. And most of these are updates to games or remasters or ports, which is kind of unfortunate. But Baltaro, Friends of Jimbo, this is like a poker roguelike. I have a friend who's really into this. It's getting an update today, and it's going to do some crossover things. Neva was announced. Sea of Stars, Throes of the Watchmaker DLC was announced. Coffee Talk.
Free DLC.
Free DLC. All right, that's cool. Coffee Talk Tokyo, Moth Kubit. I don't know that one. Power Wash Simulator is getting Shrek DLC. So that's fun. That is very fun. Date Everything is been announced. Pizza Tower is going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch. Star Overdrive going to be coming to the Nintendo Switch. Goat Simulator 3 coming to Nintendo Switch. Tetris Forever, Nintendo Switch. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, the first.
That is a mouthful.
For anyone who doesn't know what that game is, just imagine that in your head and you'll know what it is. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, the first. Great. SpongeBob.
How anime are you picturing these characters?
Oh, yeah. Very anime. SpongeBob SquarePants, the Patrick Star game. That's kind of fun. Fitness Boxing 3, your personal trainer. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. arcade classic. It's just the standard arcade classics. Capcom Fighting Collection 2, more arcade classics. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, Lego Horizons Adventures. We'll stop here for a second because this is interesting. This is Sony's first game that is also releasing on the Switch. We've never seen this before, so I think this is important to note, even if people aren't particularly excited for Lego Horizon Adventures. So worth noting there. Peglin, Morsels, Wobbly Life, Pico Park, and even more indies: The Plucky Squire, Shovel Knight, On Your Trail, Metal Slug Tactics, Europa. So many of these indie titles, no big Nintendo announcements. So a little disappointing, but hardcore Switch fans out there, I'm sure there's something on this list that you're at least excited about.
Now, Paul, out of all this stuff, especially the heavy hitters, is there anything that you are excited about to see come to the Switch, or to see release in general?
Not particularly. I think that the Lego Horizons thing is interesting, but not for that game. I think it's more interesting of like, do Sony and Nintendo start to do some more collaboration than we've seen in the past, especially with them both being Japanese companies, direct competitors, but they do have very separate gaming markets now that gaming is as big as it is. So I think that's the most interesting thing that stands out to me. Unfortunately, a lot of the other games that are interesting are like ports, where it's like My Sims, Cozy Bundle, Civ 7. I ain't playing Civ 7 on a Nintendo Switch. That ain't happening. So yeah.
I gotta say, Metal Slug Tactics. There's a screenshot of it in the thing. I was a big Metal Slug kid. I remember going to the movie theater and playing Metal Slug, and it always had this really beautiful visual style and like kind of over the top action, gruesome combat. And I love tactics games. But Morsels is also, it's got a very trying to think, what was the game where you fed Nidhogg 2 specifically. It's got like a Nidhogg 2 aesthetic. It's like this ugly, gross looking vibe, but the art direction from the trailer goes all over the place. So it looks like a real fever dream, but in a fun way. And I'm kind of like into that type of art. If you can make it work in games, hell yeah.
Sure. Right on. Yeah. Okay, well, good. I'm glad there's something that's there for you. Right on.
Yeah. Well, something.
All right, so I want to have enough time to talk about Star Wars Outlaws, so I cut two of our last stories, but I want to hit one more before we get into the main topic, and that is Deadlock. So we've brought this game up a couple times. I finally revealed that I was one of the playtesters for this. I got access, and now Valve has officially, confirmed that, yes, they are making this game. This is a game that they have publicly acknowledged. They still haven't really released a lot of details about it, but now we're seeing legitimate footage of Deadlock being put on the internet, and it's not being immediately taken down. And the most notable thing about this is that Deadlock actually hit 90,000 players as a game that is still in alpha right now.
Not even technically announced.
Not even technically announced. But like the fact that they have servers for 90,000 players for a game that's in alpha is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worth noting. I didn't really jive with the gameplay. This is, again, a lot of people have been comparing it to Overwatch. It's not really like Overwatch. It's a MOBA. It's a third-person MOBA shooter. That is what it is. And just because it has characters, like all MOBAs have characters, it's not a character shooter necessarily. But yeah, fans of MOBAs are really liking it. I wonder, I guess their biggest competitor now that Smite is kind of lost popularity is Predecessor, which we talked about on last week's episode. So
strangely enough, Predecessor, the game that follows up Paragon, think it would be reversed, but it doesn't matter. I gotta say, it's crazy that this game had 90,000 concurrent players, is only on Steam, and completely dunked on Concord's 700.
Yeah. Well, of course, you're playing Deadlock for free as opposed to buying Concord. So I think
True.
that's a big thing. But yeah,
But Concord did come out in this lull that it could have, like, people should kind of have money to spend in theory.
I agree.
And instead, they're throwing in it, well, not throwing in, but people, I think, were just excited to play a new good Valve game.
Yeah, I think like again like the engine it feels like the Team Fortress engine, the Valve engine, which I'm forgetting the name of at the moment. But yeah, I think players seem to like it. Maybe I'll go back and try it now that it's gotten some updates. But when I was playing it, it just was not my thing. But clearly, there's something about it people like. So
Mm.
yeah. All right. So while we have some time at the end of the episode, let's finally get into Star Wars Outlaws. So there have been a lot of reviews that have been coming out over the last couple of days. I think they've been kind of hyperbolic, as all of the press since this game got announced has been. But we haven't seen any great reviews of it. Nobody is saying this is a 10 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, anything like that. Most commonly, I've seen like 7. But also some people who really don't like it. And, we talked about Greg Miller said it was a 4 out of 10 for him.
Yeah.
Which is pretty dramatic. But Phil, you've actually
That is pretty wild, yeah.
yeah, you've gotten a chance to sink your teeth in a bit to this game. So what is you don't have to give a review number or anything like that, but what are your initial impressions, and where do you think these other reviewers are coming from with their complaints or their compliments?
I think I probably only played about 4, maybe 5 hours of it, so I'm not going to say that I have like a full grasp on what's going on. I've only been to a couple of planets. I will say at that point, I'm like, you know how these games type will work. I don't have my full autonomy to go where I want yet.
Sure.
But I think it's pretty enjoyable. Like for a Star Wars, you're playing a smuggler type of game. You are seeing a different side than we are seeing in Star Wars Fallen Order. You are seeing like just what the criminals are up to. You're dealing with different syndicates, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. A couple of the negatives that I've come across so far are there's some like forced stealth moments, which it forced me to like really change the way I played, but I think I could see that frustrating a lot of people. I don't know, man. I think around a 7 or 8 is like where I will eventually come down. Maybe there's like 60 more hours of this game for me to get sick of, but I like the characters. The story is really like kind of fast moving but involving. And it really kind of captures some of that adventure in Star Wars that I love so much. Like that all feels really right where it should be. We're discovering new stuff. I'm like trying to find ways to illegally change my gun. There's just a lot of really clever little like story mechanics and things like that really pull me in, and they draped a really nice Star Wars layer of it. It's not anything that's going to change the industry. I think it's just a well-made game for like people who love Star Wars and just want to be in that world.
There have been a lot of comparisons of this game to other games. Is there a game that stands out as like, if you had to compare this game to another game, like what's the closest game right next to this? Is it like, I've been hearing a lot of Uncharted. Is that close to it?
I think like the gameplay is pretty Uncharted like. You shoot from afar, and if you want to do stealth or whatever, you have to get close to someone, you push X or square to knock them out. So in that sort of sense, it is a lot of jumping and climbing. But I feel like the day-to-day gameplay, like when you're doing stuff, going to get missions and exploring, it feels somewhere between Grand Theft Auto and Assassin's Creed, where you have these contacts that you're going and talking to and like kind of working with different factions, but it's not as deep as something like Grand Theft Auto. It feels like the Assassin's Creed team trying to make a Grand Theft Auto game. It is a little bit wider than it is deep, but there is plenty to do. There's lots to discover. And, I've played on a Xbox controller and a PlayStation DualSense. there's a lot of really little great details that they get right. Like when you get on your speeder, when it's idling, you can kind of feel it idling in the dual sense. Like it's just a gentle like kick at all times. You feel your blaster when it's going off. And I feel like they, a lot of the little things they've really nailed, and the game feels pretty well polished for where it's
I've been
at.
seeing a lot of glitches that people have been posting, but I've heard that it's most glitchy on PlayStation 5. So are
Interesting.
you playing on PC? Yeah.
I'm playing on PC, yeah. I granted, you know what? I am coming at it also from the space of I paid $17 to play it.
Right.
I got the Ubisoft Plus thing, and it's got me the full digital deluxe edition.
Hmm.
And I think that there is something to be said. I can see why people would rate it lower based on the fact that it has such a terrible price model.
Hmm.
Um, if I had paid $120, I don't know if I would be as happy with it as I am. I'm
Sure.
not a diehard Star Wars fan, but I'm definitely someone like I love Batu. I love most of the movies. I'm like, yeah, I just want more Star Wars, and this gives me that.
Sure.
Um, I can see a lot of people. You know what? Okay, here is a complaint that I have.
Here we go.
The main character model is kind of ugly. I just like her face is just off. Like there's an uncanny valley thing going on. It's not that I think like physically your features are bad, but it's just like the uncanny valley is they got a little too close to person, and it's freaky to see a lot of the times.
I heard that also her voice doesn't feel like it matches her character model. Do you feel that way at all?
That hasn't really hit me, but I usually kind of like I'm very accepting of stuff like that. I'm like,
Sure.
oh yeah, okay, that's just how that person sounds.
Sure.
I will say probably some of my favorite things that I've seen are the different aliens that you talk to. Um, there's a certain like contact who gets me jobs who's a Mon Calamari, but she
Ooh.
looks very different and like different than Admiral Akbar, but
Mhm.
is very much someone from that race. So I don't know. I just like it when someone takes a property I love and kind of like creatively gets to expand and play in that place.
Mhm.
And I think this game does that really well. I'm excited to play more. Like I've got a busy next couple of days, and I just keep thinking about like, okay, when can I sneak some more time in? Because like I want to upgrade my ship, and I got to get this piece from my speeder. So like
Yeah.
it gets you in that loop. And if you're someone who enjoys that type of game, I think this is a pretty easy suggestion. I do think that for $120, I don't think any game is worth that. Like to play 3 days early, even for
Sure.
$100, I don't think this is that game. But
Yeah. Yeah, it looks very Uncharted to me. I mean, one of the criticisms of that Greg Miller had for it is he called it heartless, and I've
mm,
seen that description or that adjective, I guess, be attached to several things. Like I saw that IGN posted a review of Deadpool and Wolverine calling it heartless, like as an opinion piece, and I'm kind of wondering where that comes from. And I think for me, my current working theory is like, is that just bad storytelling where like you're having success in Deadpool and Wolverine where it's flashy and you see all the things you want to see, but because there's not like a good plot there, you
yeah,
just doesn't, or the character doesn't feel attached to things, or they don't have true relationships or something like that. Is that something that's missing, and that's why it's getting called that? Do you feel like it's, I mean, heartless again, it's kind of hyperbolic, but do you feel like there's any
yeah.
heartlessness in the game?
I would say the game is maybe a tad cynical,
Okay.
more than heartless. Like you're doing stuff and you're like, okay, well I know how this is gonna go.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of things that surprise me, but again, I don't know if that's necessarily what I come to Star Wars for as much as I just come for like, okay, snarky main character, adventure, cute little sidekick, and I gotta say, Nick's your cute little sidekick. About to throw BD8 in the trash because this little
Wow.
guy is adorable and he steals things from me.
All right. BD8
I could never
catching
do that to
catching
BD1.
strays. Yeah. Yeah.
BB8,
Oh,
eat it.
BB8. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, BD1 is my boy.
Yeah, BD1. Okay,
Um,
good.
but yeah, I definitely, I kind of, maybe this is also me personally. I'm a big Marvel person. I could see where some of the heartless stuff comes in for Deadpool and Wolverine because that movie feels like there's no context to the larger world, whatever, and that's what they kind of framed it as.
Right.
For me, this is just another Star Wars adventure, and in the same way I like The Mandalorian, where it's like, this character's not necessarily involved with all the crazy stuff we've been talking about. Here's just something else, and the Empire's there, but
she's just
you're also worried about the Pike Syndicate.
Yeah, she's a mercenary who lived at this time during Star Wars, and we're seeing her personal story, kind of thing.
I'm really interested to see what you think of the game if you get a chance to play it, because I know you're probably a bigger Star Wars fan than I am, and I don't know. I feel like we might differ on it, but I'm just having a lot of fun with it's silly Star Wars stuff. I have my little pet Newt dog attack people and then I punch them in the face.
Right.
That's checking all my boxes for what I thought this game was going to be.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I know that I've been, pessimistic about a lot of Star Wars properties over the last couple of years. But I think, for this game, my expectations were never really that high. And I think there's a lot of people who had really high expectations. And we talked about, how much this game was being covered in the news. And, then it comes out and it's getting 7s. And it's it's good. It's a good game.
Yeah.
It's not like you
have
to play it.
Yeah.
But, and so for me, it's my expectations weren't high. I think that glitches are going to happen. The game just launched. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have glitches and they're going to have to hotfix it and everything. That stuff happens. But the only noticeable thing for me that I'm a little wary on is the gameplay, where it's I don't know that the shooting looks like it feels good or the stealth looks like it feels good. And so and that's something that I'm just going to have to play myself and feel myself, playing it. So, but that's the only kind of flag that has popped up on my personal radar with this game. So
I think there's to speak to the shooting, for me it feels a little floaty, but it definitely feels closer to Uncharted.
Does it feel more casual? And because I feel a lot of gamers are oh, we want this hardcore Star Wars experience, and that's not what this is. But that's it's never what it was going to be, guys. It was never going to be this.
It's not going to be the Andor of video games.
Yeah, or this skill-based Star Wars. You want skill-based Star Wars? Go play Battlefront.
Mm-hmm. Go play Fallen Order on a Jedi Master.
Yeah, go do that.
No, I definitely think that it is more of a casual game. There's a criticism of that I saw that I think it was in the IGN review where you can't keep weapons other than your main side blaster.
Right.
They fall off. And I think that kind of fits. Sorry, I got a fire truck.
You're good. I
think it fits more so in this game that your character isn't holding on to stuff. Your character just has their blaster and I'm gonna go in there and I'll figure it out. I don't need a whole outfit.
Yeah. So. I think I kind of saw what they were talking about in that criticism. I think if they did it how they did it in Uncharted, where even if your blaster is your blaster, you cannot swap that out with any other pistol. But oh, I have this rifle, I can whip it over my back. But if I pick up another rifle, then it's gone. And whereas a longer gun is more temporary. Because you're just, an Uncharted, it's just just fight with what you can find. And so I like that element, but just dropping it because you're crouching, going through events does seem pretty dumb.
That's the type of thing they should fix.
Yes. So, but hopefully maybe Ubisoft will actually do that. So we will see.
Yeah. But so far I would suggest it for people to play and form their own opinion of. Yeah. It's for every game, play it and figure out if you like it. But I think it is definitely something that if you're a Star Wars fan that, doesn't hate everything Star Wars, you might enjoy it.
I feel a little targeted. So, but I'm not.
I'm just upset that the Acolyte isn't coming back.
Is that what you're upset about?
Darth Smiley is my favorite new Sith.
funny. Yeah, everybody is like online right now. Like, God, why did they cancel it? It's like everybody talked crap about it for like 2 months straight. And then you're like, why did they cancel it? It's like, because you complained for 2 months straight. Like,
well, to be fair, I think the people who enjoyed it quietly, because the people online that were upset about it were a specific group of people that maybe hated that there was a specific group of people in that show.
Oh, I see.
And that created like this real, I don't know. There's a thing with fandoms right now where if something is coming out, they're just, unless it is a very like Deadpool and Wolverine, there gets to be this swirl of like people hating on a new thing coming out that is almost impossible to escape for a lot of these big projects. Maybe it's because they're too big, but
yeah, I mean, I also like people who quietly enjoy things. I'm right there with you. I love quietly enjoying things, but sometimes like if you really enjoy something, you got to speak out about it, because that's how these companies run now. They run like where it's like, well, is it trending? How did it do on Twitter? How is it doing on Instagram? And if it's not doing well online, they use that as a way to gauge whether they are going to continue working on something. So if you really enjoy something, voice it. I know that seems annoying and we shouldn't have to do that. But unfortunately, that's how companies make decisions nowadays.
Nielsen has fallen down on the job. He used to come into my house and ask me what I was watching, like the Nielsen report. This is an old thing for when TVs were connected to cable.
Oh my God. When was that?
In the dinosaur days.
Ah, yes.
Back when dinosaurs was on the TV.
Yes, the Flintstones. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there because we are out of time. But thank you for listening to episode 46 of the GGG Podcast. Got a nice little dance for you on your way out today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Golden Glazed Gaming. And if you're listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, you're probably on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So you just give us a review or a like over there as well. We really appreciate it. But yeah, that's going to do it for us this week. And we're going to be probably off next week or maybe a late episode. We will see. And hopefully I'll have that Concord video coming out for you as well for the 700 people who are interested.
Hey, if we turn that into 701, we're helping out our buddies.
See, it's all worth it.
Do it for Lennox.
Yes, for Lennox. All right. Peace out, everybody.